I want to focus on the night before Dan Markel's murder, late that night. Using a timeline, can you walk us through the communication that evening on July 17th, going into the early morning hours of July 18th?
Yes. So again, kind of same format here. We see, this is slide 185, we see calls between Charlie Adelson and Donna Adelson at 10:18 and 10:29, both of them for just over 4 minutes.
Okay, and what's next?
We see at about 11:40, there is communication between Mr. Garcia and Ms. Magbanua.
Okay, and what happens after that?
Additional communications between Kathryn and Sigfredo, and then Charlie calls Kathryn just after midnight.
Okay, and is there any more after that?
There is. We see that Ms. Magbanua calls Charlie again at 12:34 a.m. for a short duration call. And then Charlie calls her back at 1:03 a.m.
Okay. And the Charlie calls Donna at 1:02 a.m. Was there no duration on that?
No duration on that.
Okay. All right. So then moving on to later that morning, which is going to be the morning of July 18th when Dan Markel was murdered. What can you tell us about all the co-conspirators' communication that morning between 8 a.m. and 12:30 p.m.?
So again, another call detail summary between those subjects. Here, slide 192, we're referencing the time when the shooting of Mr. Markel occurred. And in combination with the iCloud return with text message content, in the forensic examination of Wendi Adelson's phone, the communication records from the carriers, we kind of have a more complete idea of the communications between these persons the morning of the 18th.
Okay, and the yellow line there shows out what time in the call detail records the homicide occurred?
Yes.
Can you walk us through all the cell phone evidence that morning?
So again, just looking at the communications between our primary subjects, Wendi had the calendar event that for 8 a.m. for fixed TV.
And I want to ask you about that. Did she often have calendar events in her phone?
She did, yes.
And she would often delete those events?
Correct.
All right. When was this calendar event deleted?
I do not know.
Okay. Was it when she was with law enforcement the afternoon of July 18th? Did they take her phone and run a Cellbrite report on it?
Yes. So this extraction occurred on the late evening hours of July 18th.
Okay. And in the Cellbrite, it would have shown that the calendar event was deleted. Is that right?
Correct.
So would she have had to have deleted it before her cell phone was Cellbrighted that evening?
Yes.
Okay. So sometime between 8 a.m. when the event is on her phone and that evening it was deleted.
It could have been deleted before that date.
Okay. All right. So first call to Donna Adelson and Wendi Adelson. Can you show that to us?
Yes. So again, we see at 8:09 a.m. there's a call from Wendi to Donna.
Okay. Let me ask you one thing from the night before. Was it unusual for Charlie Adelson and Donna Adelson to communicate or attempt to communicate at 1 a.m. that late?
They're communicate over a pretty broad range of time. I think it was pretty clear that that event was a misdial that he immediately corrected and called Ms. Magbanua, and that's why there was no duration to it.
Okay, thank you. All right, so moving on to that morning, we saw the calendar event, and then does Donna place the first call that morning between the co-conspirators to Wendi?
Wendi calls Donna. Let's back up. So yes, Wendi actually calls Donna at 8:09.
Okay. And what's next?
Donna attempts back at about the same time frame. Little phone tag maybe. And then we see a text message from Donna to Wendi again about the Best Buy service.
And she says, they're on their way over now to help with the TV sets in your living room.
Correct.
All right, what's next?
Wendi has a text to Charlie stating, "This is so sweet."
And that was deleted?
Correct.
And would that have had to have been deleted then before the Cellbrite that afternoon, sometime between when it was received at 8:20 and the Cellbrite that afternoon?
Correct.
All right, what's next?
Wendi receives a voicemail from Dan Markel.
Okay, and do you have that voicemail where you could play it for us?
I believe so.
Hey, Wendi. Good morning. It's 9 o'clock on Friday. Just wanted to let you know I'm hoping to pick the boys up early this afternoon and get them swimming. And then have them ready for you around 4:30 or 5. You can get them up. Either at the school or at the house. So let me know if that's okay with you. And also I'd love to chat with you about that situation for school. And Thursday stuff and all that. I'm going to be at the gym probably between 9:15 and 10:30. But happy to chat. You know, go for a walk in school, something like that. Okay, bye.
What time was that voicemail left for Wendi Adelson?
9:04 a.m.
Okay, what happens after that?
So Charlie calls Wendi, or attempts to call Wendi, at 9:12.
And that's 29 seconds?
Correct.
Okay, what's next?
Wendi texts Dan Markel, stating, "The repairman at my house now. I am picking up the boys at 3 p.m., so your swim idea is a no-go today."
So, do we know exactly what time she listened to that? Was it 9:04?
9:04 was the voicemail.
Do we know exactly what time she listened to that 9:04 voicemail?
We do not.
But it seems she would have listened to it before this text at 9:12.
She does seem to acknowledge the content of the voicemail in this text message reply.
So she heard it sometime between 9:04 and 9:12.
Correct.
Okay. Now, in that message, he mentions he's going to the gym, right? At
He did.
9:15. But from the surveillance videos that we have, by the time he got to the gym at 9:15, were the killers already tailing him?
Appeared to be so, yes.
Okay. And are you familiar with Luis Rivera's statement that they had been tailing him all morning? They followed him from his house to the preschool that morning.
Correct.
All right, so can you walk us through these messages starting at 9:12 a.m. that Wendi Adelson has with Dan Markel?
Yes. So, again, she indicated that the swim idea was a no-go. Mr. Markel responds about his day ending at 4:30.
Meaning that he gets to keep the boys under the schedule until 4:30.
Correct.
Okay.
As again, in this message, he says, "under our schedule." And he continues, "and you had them until 5 last week." And this is at 9:13 a.m.
Okay.
Wendi Adelson responds, "because you needed to food shop." This is at 9:15. Mr. Markel replies, "you weren't making them available until 5.
And at this point, he's already in the Premier parking lot around that time.
Would be correct, yes.
Okay.
Wendi
What is-
responds, "if it was 4:30 last Friday, you should have told me that. Why tell me now?" This is at 9:19. And also at 9:19, Wendi receives a call from Charlie, lasts a little over 18 minutes.
Okay. So at the point where Dan Markel's already at the gym at 9:19, right?
Yes,
And the killers have already followed him to the gym at that point, right?
correct,
And this is per surveillance footage from Premier.
correct.
At this point, Wendi and Charlie have an 18 and 17 second phone conversation.
An 18-minute and 17-second, yes.
Okay. What happens next after this phone conversation?
So after the phone call started, Wendi would have received the incoming text, "because I was being nice." And then about the time that phone call would have ended, Wendi texts Dan back.
And does she say, nice was fun while it lasted? See you at 4:30 today at my house then?
Correct.
So after this 18-minute phone call with Charlie Adelson, does she seemingly change her stance in the argument? She kind of concedes the argument and agrees with what Dan Markel is asking. He can keep the boys until 4:30.
Correct.
And then within about an hour of this message was Dan Markel killed.
He was shot, yes.
Shot, thank you. Walk us through what happens next.
So there are additional communications. Charlie attempts to call Donna at 9:38. Charlie attempts to call Kathryn at 9:57. Return attempt just after. And then Charlie and Kathryn talk for almost 7 minutes at 9:58.
Okay.
Charlie calls Wendi 10:06, short duration. Kathryn attempts Charlie again, 10:07, 10:08. The return call at 10:09 for about 6 minutes. And that's the last of the communications prior to the shooting.
Okay, is Charlie also that morning playing phone tag with the attorney representing him in the divorce, Stephen Webster?
Dan Markel is.
I'm sorry, Dan Markel, thank you. And did Dan Markel have communication where he's playing phone tag with Stephen Webster?
Yes, this is slide 220, and we see from Mr. Markel's records several incoming, outgoing text or voice attempts with Stephen Webster.
And are they basically setting up a time to talk later in the morning?
Your Honor, facts not evidence, and also speculation.
Saying as the facts, not evidence, unless you can lay a foundation for this was Dugan.
Have you reviewed the text in these call detail records?
Briefly,
Did it appear that they were setting up a time to talk later that day?
yes.
Okay. Is the last outgoing communication from Dan Markel 10:34 a.m.?
Yes.
And Dan Markel would have been killed within a few minutes of sending that outgoing message?
Correct.
All right, I want to shift now to the cell phone locations in this case. You walked us through at the beginning of your presentation yesterday Dan Markel's locations on the morning of the murder: Trescott, preschool, gym. What can you tell us about Rivera and Garcia's locations that morning?
So again, as you mentioned, slide 222 here, we see the locations that he was. We know his approximate arrival, the arrival of the Prius into Premier Health and Fitness just after 9 a.m. And what we see now up to slide 224, these are the cell site locations for Mr. Garcia and Mr. Rivera. Again, Mr. Garcia is in orange, Rivera in blue, but these are the first events with location. We have the morning of the 18th, July 18th, and we see that Mr. Rivera and Mr. Garcia's location are both consistent with them being in the area of Premier Health and Fitness.
Okay, and what was the last event with location data that we have for them while consistent with Premier Gym?
It's going to be these that you see here. So 9:58 for Mr. Garcia, 9:46 for Mr. Rivera.
When was their next event with location after these events?
It was afternoon.
Okay, can you walk us through that?
I can. We see, again, Mr. Markel's vehicle leaving the Premier Health and Fitness, 10:38. The Prius traveling just after. And then we see the location information here. This is slide 227. And again, just looking at the cell site locations, Mr. Garcia's in orange, Rivera's in blue. We see that those events we just saw at Premier Health and Fitness are at the top. And the next event we have, you see, is the 12:30 event for Mr. Garcia, where they appear to be on 75 traveling southbound.
So from Tallahassee to around the Gainesville area, there were no events with location.
Correct.
Could that be consistent with them turning their phones off after they left Premier Gym?
It could, yes.
Sometimes when people commit crimes, do they try to turn their phones off during that time?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation.
Sustained unless you can lay a foundation for this particular point, Ms. Dugan.
I'll move on, Judge. All right, so let's start at 12:30. Who was the call to 12:32?
So this is a summary of Mr. Garcia's records for the morning of the 18th. And what we see is his first outgoing call, which happens to be that same event we have with location at 12:30, was to Miss Magbanua.
Even though the call appears to be a short duration, is there any evidence that it went to voicemail or Magbanua did not answer the call?
There's no evidence it was not received.
What do the phone records indicate about the status of Garcia's phone from the last event at Premier to the time he called Kathryn Magbanua at 12:30?
Well, we do see at 12:18 and 12:19, we see 2 incoming calls that do not create locations, which means they did not actually reach the handset. The handset was not in communication with the network. So we know, at least for those times, that the handset was not, again, in communication with the network. Power down, battery dead. However, and then we also see these short codes, this 122 and 129, that are coming into the phone at 12:29. And these are consistent with notifications to the handset about missed calls or voicemails or other things. So those events would be consistent with that phone being powered back on or returning to the network at about that 12:29 time frame.
Okay. And once it comes back on at 12:29, the first call is to Magbanua?
Correct.
Switching gears here, I want to talk about Wendi Adelson's locations during that morning and early afternoon time frame when Dan Markel was murdered. Are you familiar with Wendi Adelson's statement about her locations on the day of Dan Markel's murder and the route that she took on July 18th after her TV repair appointment?
Yes.
Okay, can you walk us through that?
So again, we see her residence here at the time, the Aqua Ridge Way. This is slide 230. Again, just the flag there indicates the area of her residence.
So is Aqua Ridge kind of off Centerville Road, north of I-10?
Yes.
All right. Based on the location info from her call detail records, can you determine the approximate time she encountered the roadblock on Trescott Drive?
I can, yes.
Okay.
So we also have a receipt from ABC Fine Wine and Spirits that is time-stamped at 12:49 p.m. on the 18th. So looking at communication records with location, we see that she begins a voice call at 12:31 p.m. Her cell site is listed as the purple dot and starts at 12:31. We can see, this is slide 232. As we come down to about the middle here, she has an event at 12, or communication during this phone call with a cell site at 12:35, and then that call ends at 12:47. So we see again that will be consistent with her leaving the area of her residence sometime around the 12:31 time frame, and being in the area of, and this 12:47 cell site could be the ABC Liquors as well. We know the receipt time's just a couple of minutes later. So with that, and to slide 233, with that receipt being at 12:49, the voice call ending at 12:47, she would have passed by Mr. Markel's residence just prior to that.
Okay, meaning maybe somewhere around 12:35 to 12:45.
Correct.
Did Dan Markel have he and Wendi Adelson's children the morning of July 18th?
I'm sorry?
Did Dan Markel have the children the morning of July 18th and he took them to school that morning?
He did, yes.
Okay. Looking at Wendi Adelson's call detail records, were you able to see her calls, who they were from and to, and the times on July 18th of 2014?
Yes. So slide 234, a summary of her calls that morning. and we can see in the highlighted sections here calls that would have been made or received after the time that she would have passed by the Markel residence.
When she encountered that roadblock, the crime scene tape with the police cars behind it in front of the Markel residence, did she attempt to call Dan Markel to make sure he or the kids were okay?
She did not.
Did she attempt to call the children's daycare, creative preschool, to make sure that they made it to school and there wasn't some type of incident?
She did not.
Did she attempt to call 911 or law enforcement to see what was going on since her children had been staying on that street?
She did not.
Did she just continue to the liquor store and then on to lunch?
Correct.
Are you familiar with the area of Thomasville Road and I-10 where the restaurant Mosaic used to be, which was the restaurant she went to lunch at that day?
I am.
Were there any liquor stores in that area back in July 2014?
There were, yes.
Okay, can you walk? Thank you.
So what we see, slide 237, again, we are showing the residence, her residence at the time on Aqua Ridge, and her ultimate destination, which was Mosaic off of Thomasville Road. So clearly the next slide here shows, as calculated by the mapping software, the most direct route between those two locations as far as where she was heading.
And then were there any liquor stores in the area of Mosaic at that time?
There were. So at that time, there was Publix Liquors on Thomasville Road there, very close to Mosaic. There was Market Square Liquors off Thomasville, and also another ABC location a little further north on Thomasville Road.
Would those Publix and Market Square Liquors be a lot closer to Aqua Ridge and Mosaic than the one she ultimately went to?
They would, and this is slide 242, which shows the route she ended up taking versus what is calculated as the most efficient route. We can see there's a difference of about 9 minutes longer to go the other way.
So she went 9 minutes out of the way to go to the ABC Liquors next to Dan Markel's home.
Correct.
All right, switching gears again. July 18th, the last slide that we saw of Garcia and Rivera's locations was around the Gainesville area when the phones were powered back on and the 12:30 call was made by Garcia to Kathryn McVanois. Does the next map show Garcia and Rivera continuing to come back down to the Miami area?
Yes, we do see here slide 244 as another large time frame without location information, but we see in the late afternoon, early evening hours, the use on the phones returns, and we see that they are getting into the South Florida area.
Okay, once back in Miami, did they stop somewhere where they were caught on video?
Yes, so we have an ATM withdrawal from Mr. Rivera. We can see that that occurred at 6:46 p.m. and through the records we were able to determine the location of that specific ATM where that transaction occurred in Pembroke Pine.
Okay.
So slide 247 shows the location of the ATM by the yellow flag in the middle. The, again, blue and orange circles represent the cell sites their handsets were using at the time, and we can see that their locations are consistent with the area of that ATM around the time of that transaction.
All right. Moving on to July 18th. Okay, thank you.
So from that ATM, there were also surveillance images obtained of Mr. Rivera driving, Mr. Garcia in the passenger seat, and again of the green Prius.
And then after that, was Garcia in communication with Kathryn McVanois that evening?
Yes.
Was McVanois also in communication with her friend Yendra Mascaro that evening?
Yes. So here again, slide 250 is the summary of the communications at that afternoon and evening. And we can highlight here several communications between Ms. Bagbanawa and Mr. Garcia. And in addition to those, we do see communications between Ms. Bagbanawa and Ms. Mascaro.
And was there evidence that Bagbanawa went to Rivera's house to meet up with Garcia on the night of July 18th?
There was. As we see again, Ms. Bagbanawa's cell sites represented here in red. She has events up to 8:46 that are consistent with the area of her residence. And we can see as we move across the slide here, 253, events at 9:20 and 9:23, and ultimately 9:42, that will be consistent with her traveling away from the area of her residence and toward the area of Mr. Rivera's residence.
And are you familiar with Bagbanawa's statement that she dropped her kids off at Yindra Mascaro's residence for the night that night, on the night of July 18th?
Yes.
And whose residence is on the way to Rivera's?
Ms. Mascaro's.
And is Bagbanawa then at Rivera's residence by around 9:42 p.m.?
I'm sorry, you have a question.
Your Honor, there's a question from the jury.
You use the bathroom.
Thank
The
you.
bailiff will take you to the restroom. Everyone can be seated. Believed to accommodate the issue that we discussed previously at sidebar about scheduling, we'll need to stop this morning at 11:30, but once the jurors come back out, we'll at least get another hour of the testimony in. If the defendant needs to use the restroom, bailiffs, please take her at this time. Everyone can be seated. Ms. Dugan, you may continue with the examination of Sergeant Corbitt.
Okay, so the night of July 18th was Kathryn Bagbanawa's cell phone consistent with Rivera's residence by around 9:42 p.m.?
Yes, just after that. We see from the call summary, the last communication between Ms. Bagbanawa and Mr. Garcia was at 9:46 p.m. And what we see as her events at 9:46 and 9:47 are very consistent with Mr. Rivera's residence. So that kind of coincides with the end of their back and forth communication, with her location becoming consistent with Rivera's residence, where Mr. Garcia's location was also consistent.
Okay, and could that be consistent with her communicating with Garcia? That communication ends once she arrives at Rivera's residence, where Garcia and Rivera are also there.
Correct.
Now, after being there for a little while, does Kathryn Bagbanawa communicate with Charlie Adelson?
She does, and again, back to the summary, we see that there is an outgoing call from Mr. Adelson at 10:12, very, very short duration, and then Ms. Bagbanawa calls Mr. Adelson back at 10:20 for about a 2-minute phone call.
And tell us about Kathryn Bagbanawa's location for that 10:20 call to Charlie Adelson.
So what we see, the 10:20 and 10:22, is the last times that her location is consistent with the area around Mr. Rivera's residence.
Were we able to find any other evidence of her and Charlie Adelson's plans for the night of July 18th?
Yes, and again, that was slide 257 we just spoke of. This is communication from Mr. Adelson's iCloud, and the afternoon and evening of July 18th, where she asked, how's work been, hon? He says, been busy. And then later, about to start a big case, which she acknowledges.
Okay, and did they discuss their plans for that night?
They did. 8:22 p.m. She texts, "You're still at work." Mr. Adelson, Charlie Adelson, responds, "Just finishing. I'm not really feeling good. Maybe we can just hang at my house."
And that message from him is at 8:23 p.m. to Kathryn McBanois?
That's correct.
Okay, and he says he's not feeling good before she comes to his house.
Correct.